Our communities and especially our kids' classrooms are just filled with this incredible variety of beliefs and traditions. But there's one huge part of that diversity we often kind of shy away from talking about, and that's religion. But this isn't some abstract topic. It's a daily reality for our children, shaping how they and their friends see the entire world. All right, so to kick things off, let's start with a question. Just take a second and think about it. When you picture the religious landscape of the United States, what comes to mind? You probably have a pretty solid guess for number one, but what about number two? I'm willing to bet the answer is going to surprise you. And there it is, the second largest group. It's the unaffiliated. We're talking about almost a quarter of all Americans, people who identify as atheist, agnostic, or simply nothing in particular. So while Christianity is still the majority, the idea of a single, uniform American faith, well, that's clearly a thing of the past. And if you think that's interesting, well, the picture gets even more complex when we drill down into the details. I mean, just look at the diversity inside that Christian category alone. Then you start adding in this beautiful mosaic of non-Christian faiths, and it becomes so clear that we are talking about a deeply, deeply varied landscape of belief. Okay, so with all those numbers in mind, let's actually talk about the people behind them. We're going to do a quick tour of 5 major religions. Now, this is just a brief intro, right? But it'll give us some really helpful context for the kind of diversity our kids are seeing every single day. All right, first up, Christianity, which is the largest religion in the U.S. It all began with Jesus of Nazareth, and his teachings really centered on this idea of caritas, or charity, a principle we all know today as the Golden Rule, right? Treat others as you would like to be treated. So the sacred text is the Bible, though you'll find different groups have their own variations. Some of the core beliefs include the Holy Trinity, this idea of God in 3 forms, and of course, the 10 Commandments, which lay out a foundational moral code against things like theft and murder. Okay, next up we have Judaism. It's a monotheistic faith, and it's built on what's called a covenant, which is like a special promise between God and the Jewish people. The real focus here is on moral behavior and doing good in this life. Their sacred texts are the Torah and the Talmud. And this is a really, really important point. Identifying as Jewish isn't always about religious practice. For so many people, it is a powerful ethnic and cultural identity, completely separate from belief. Moving on to Islam, whose followers are called Muslims. The name itself means peace and submission. Pretty powerful, right? It's another monotheistic religion, and it follows the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, who is seen as the messenger of Allah, or God. The entire faith is guided by 5 core pillars that unite Muslims all over the world. These are daily practices, like prayer and charity, but also profound life events, like the pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca for those who are able. All right, now let's talk about Buddhism. It was founded by a man named Siddhartha Gautama, who became known as the Buddha, which literally means the enlightened one. And he taught that anyone, absolutely anyone, could reach this state of enlightenment, called Bodhi, through living a moral life and through meditation. The heart of Buddhist thought really comes down to the 4 noble truths, which are all about understanding suffering and desire and following the middle way, a path of moderation. And what's really distinct here is the incredible emphasis on personal responsibility rather than devotion to a central God. And last but definitely not least, let's look at Hinduism, the world's oldest religion. It started in the Indus River Valley thousands of years ago, and today it's the 3rd largest religion in the world. A central belief is in a single divine power that can show up in many different forms, like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So Hindus follow ancient, sacred texts called the Vedas, and their lives are guided by principles like Dharma, which is all about your duty and doing the right thing in the world, and Karma, this idea that the consequences of your actions, good and bad, play out across many cycles of life and reincarnation. Okay, so we've just zipped through 5 major world religions. All these different worldviews, histories, and practices. So where do they all meet? Where do they all collide? Well, often for the very first time, it's in the early childhood classroom. This is where that beautiful, messy complexity of our society becomes a daily reality for our kids. And that brings us to the core challenge. As one source puts it so well, a lot of teachers are just uncomfortable talking about religion. So what happens? The default becomes celebrating only the majority holidays. And the unintentional but very real result is that kids from other traditions can be made to feel, well, invisible. And look, we can't just pretend this stuff goes over kids' heads. It absolutely doesn't. Young children are incredibly observant little detectives. They notice when a friend wears a different type of clothing or doesn't eat the same snacks or is absent for a holiday they've never even heard of. They're trying to piece it all together, even when they don't have the words to ask. So, okay, we see the challenge. What do we do about it? Well, this is all about shifting from just being aware of diversity to taking intentional action. It's about building classrooms and really communities that are genuinely inclusive for everyone. This slide really breaks it down, right? You've got two totally different ways of looking at this. The first one basically expects everyone to just assimilate into the main culture. But the second approach, that one creates a truly inclusive model, a place where every tradition is respected, every kid has a voice, and nobody has to hide a part of who they are. And building that kind of inclusive space isn't some pie-in-the-sky idea. It comes down to really practical, concrete actions. It means respecting dietary needs, honoring religious clothing, celebrating holidays with real authenticity, not as some exotic activity, and filling the bookshelf with diverse stories that show kids that many traditions exist and they are all valued. But at the end of the day, this work really has to start with us. For educators, and honestly for all of us, it means taking a look at our own beliefs and our own biases. The goal is to be able to listen without judgment, to recognize just how important a family's faith can be, and to see difference not as a challenge to overcome, but as an amazing opportunity to learn. And yeah, we've been talking a lot about the classroom, but let's be real. These lessons apply everywhere. Building this kind of understanding is essential, not just for our schools, but for our workplaces, our neighborhoods, for our society as a whole. And that's the thing. This work isn't always comfortable or easy. The path to real understanding takes curiosity and patience. And as this quote reminds us, it takes a willingness to feel a little uncomfortable sometimes. It takes the humility to say, I don't know everything. That's where real connection begins. So I'm going to leave you with this one last thing to really think about. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher, a parent, a neighbor, or a friend. How would you make sure a child's beliefs are honored and respected, even if they were totally different or even contradictory to your own? The answer to that question, well, that's at the very heart of building a truly inclusive world.